Hey guys! So today we are going to start painting on our value painting. Yesterday we set things up, found your picture, put it on the canvas, and created your value scale. And today I'm going to show you how to start painting. So I'm going to recommend starting with the lightest value. You could also start with the darkest if you prefer, but I'd like you to start at one end of the scale and work your way in the other direction. So every color that you've used, that you've painted with, will save down here. And I have some extras because I adjusted my colors. So another way to get your colors on your brush is to use this little target symbol down here. All right, so with this, whatever you roll it on top of, it gives you that color and puts it on your paintbrush. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to reduce my paintbrush size. Right, again, so for this project, we are using the oil paints. That's these 5 brushes right here, 5 different shapes and sizes. Each one can be made bigger or smaller with the plus or minus signs. It can be, if it's handy, you could, put, a different color on each brush from your palette. And then you can just, switch when you need that color. Oh, I don't know why it's changing them all. That's kind of weird. Doesn't usually do that. Okay, never mind. Anyway, so let's do that because I'm going to start with that color. And right, so this is my smallest brush. This is good for really small details. This is the brush that I use the most often. I've been using it on not the smallest, but the second smallest for kind of like a lot of my painting. If you have any really big areas that are one color, the fan brush can be good. And then this flat one is better for like straight lines, if you're trying to make something kind of square and even. And this is the Filbert brush. This one has kind of a rounded edge, so it can be good for getting smooth round edges. But again, I mostly use this one. And just so you're aware, right, so over here we have watercolors. We're not using those for this project. So if you see these paintbrushes, we're not using those for this one. We'll use them for another project. Here I want you to stick with the oil paints, and also we've got drawing tools over here, which again, we're not using for this project. We'll use them in the future. So stay here in this middle drawer. You also have an eraser if you need it. I really don't use the eraser that much. I mostly use the undo button. So if I do something and I don't like it, immediately, I can just click this undo button, right, this back arrow, and just undo the last thing I did instead of erasing it. It's a little bit easier. But if you need to erase something that you did a little bit, like not the last thing you did, I would use the eraser, which can also be made bigger or smaller. And then we also have a blending stick, which can be used to blend wet paint together. Anyway, let's dive in here. So right now I've got the lightest color on my brush, and I want to look for all of the places in my picture where I see white or almost white, any light colors. And depending on your picture, I don't have a whole lot of white, so I'm going to use it for anything that looks pretty light, right? So I'm make my brush a bit bigger here for these backgrounds. And if you have a background that has a lot of detail, I would recommend, you still have to do the background. I want your whole picture to be covered in paint. But if you have a detailed foreground and you want to kind of reduce the amount of stuff you have to paint, you can kind of blur your background the way, my background is already kind of blurry. That's kind of what I would go for if if you're trying to reduce the busyness in your background. All right, so those are the lightest spots in my background. Now I'm going to reduce my paintbrush size and look for lighter areas. All right, so I'm going to, all these kind of dots, I'm going to do in my lightest value. And again, depending on your picture, it might make more sense to start with your darkest value. Do whatever seems best to you, but I think it's a good idea to start at one end of the scale and work your way in the other direction. I also highly recommend using your finger to draw on the touchscreen. Personally, I find that to be by far the easiest way to draw. I know some people might disagree with me, and that is okay if you've tried it and disagree, but please do try it before you say it's not for you. So another thing you might notice that I'm doing here is I'm zooming in while I work. So when you're working, I want you, like most of the time, you should not be all the way out here. This is kind of too far out to really get the paint where you intend to put it. So the way that you zoom in this program is on your touchscreen or on your trackpad. You pinch two fingers and move them apart on the touchscreen. While you're zoomed in, if you want to move around, you would use two fingers on the touchscreen to pan, right, to move it around. All right, so I'm looking for all of those lightest and brightest spots. As always, I'd like you to work slowly and carefully. Craftsmanship is a big part of your grade. If it looks sloppy and messy, it won't be a great grade. If it looks carefully done, it will be a good grade. I also really want you to pay attention to value, right? That's the whole point here. Noticing any, slight variations, right? Just because I have a yellow flower doesn't mean it's all the same value yellow, right? So it's lighter up here towards the edge of the petals, and then it gets darker towards the middle and even darker on the bottom. There are probably 4 different values, maybe even 5 in that flower. So I'm not completely done with my first value, but just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm going to go from here, I'm going to keep moving. So I'm going to grab my second value. And start adding it in. Any place that's a little bit darker than the areas I just filled in. So something that you may or may not want to use is blending, right? So in this program, something that's great about it is that your paint stays wet until you dry it. So as you can see, right? I'm kind of blending these two colors together because in this area of my painting, they kind of blend together softly, right? So I'm just moving my finger back and forth on the screen to kind of smush those colors together. And every time you pick up your finger and put it back down, that's like adding more paint to your paintbrush. But as long as you keep your finger on the screen and wiggle it around, you're just blending, you're not adding more paint. Another way you can blend without adding more paint is with that blender stick, right? So if I want to blend without adding more paint, oops, I can use this blending stick to move my paint around. And then again, if you don't want your paint to blend, you just want to paint over something without it mixing together, then you can press this fan button. Press that and it dries everything. Thing to know about the fan button is if you press it, you can't then erase something that you've dried. But you can always paint over something. So if you have a mistake, you can always paint over it, but you won't be able to erase it. So that is the gist of what we're doing here. I will do one more demo video, once this picture gets a little more advanced, to show you, integrating all of the values together. But this is how you're going to start it with your first couple values. Thanks. Bye-bye.